The outlook for the Philadelphia 76ers greatly changed in both the short and long term when reality struck in this season that Joel Embiid did not look like Joel Embiid. As the Sixers star begins his pathway to discovering what the best possible outcome for maximizing the remainder of his basketball career is, both Embiid and the Sixers are faced with some hard questions that they have to address head on. Well, I tried to get to the bottom of it myself by meeting up and speaking with Dr. Rami Hashish, one of the best doctors in the game who's worked with a number of NFL and NBA teams, as well as been a court reference in thousands of cases for medical malpractice and things like that. You can check out all his work on his website, which is also linked below, but do want to pull up a couple clips from my full interview with him, which was to discover the full status of Joel Embiid. Now, before I dive fully into it, we do know the status that Embiid has been officially shut down for the year. We also got a little bit of a look at him. Shout out to Joel taking in a St. Joe's basketball game this season. Cool for him to be out on the town with Arthur right alongside him there. Will be unfortunate. It looks like we're looking down the barrel of no Philly teams qualifying for March Madness, and I say this as a guy who fills in as the producer for the Villanova radio broadcast there. It does not look likely that we'll be seeing that for another season there, but nonetheless, doing us talk about the status of Joel Embiid. And before I do that exactly, do want to remind you guys one more time to make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I do want to hear a little bit of feedback for this specific video, changing things up a little bit with Dr. Rami Hashish. Want to get his full impact, but do want to remind you guys once again that 71.4% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel just yet. Once again, do want to hear what you guys think of this particular content, but I have three kind of questions that I want to play the full answers that Dr. Rami gave me here. One regarding if we can see the MVP version of Joel Embiid ever again. One discussing the contract, the extension that he was handed, and the criticism that Daryl Morey is facing as a result. And then one kind of a broader question about what is the reality that Joel Embiid is facing and what are the recovery options from here. But to start off with, do want to play this regarding can Joel Embiid ever be the MVP version of himself once again? Do you think there's any chance that Joel Embiid could return to the MVP version of himself, or do you think this is something we should start talking about, change the game, change the style, and just kind of maximize whatever there is to maximize?
Yeah, I think he could be back to
Okay.
being an MVP player for sure. I think, but it really comes down to obviously the health of that knee, but also I think a lot of it comes down to him as well. And I don't, if we look at Zion, and I'm kind of lumping them in together, is because there's a similar issue here and a similar pattern where it deals with weight and the time in which these individuals take in perfecting their body, right? So unfortunately, not everybody dealt with the same hand. Some can get by, some can't, right? Joel Embiid is in a position where he needs to perfect his body in order to play at a high level. He will not be able to skate by being a little bit heavier or having improper muscle balance and all those types of things. He literally needs to perfect his body. And yeah, do I believe if he does that, can he get back to being an MVP caliber player? Of course, right? Uh, as I mentioned before, degeneration and these types of things are expected and they're natural. And obviously, they're progressed if you have higher weight or different factors. But that doesn't mean that it can't be addressed. You can have severe degeneration in your femur or your thigh bone, and you can have severe breakdown of the cartilage within your meniscus. But if you work on the strength and flexibility of your knee joint, and you really work on rehabbing your knee joint, the muscle and the flexibility can overcome a lot of those internal issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see this regularly with high level athletes. High level athletes regularly have this breakdown of the cartilage. Let's just look at NFL players and NFL running backs. They have breakdown of their cartilage and their meniscus where after their playing career, they can't even they can't even walk. But during their career, they overcome a lot of this through really improving and maximizing the strength of their quads and their hamstrings and their glutes and optimizing kind of their flexibility to kind of overcome the degeneration that's actually internal.
So sort of a reassuring answer that I would classify that as by Dr. Rami there. I would say it started in kind of the reassuring and optimistic lens and sort of shifted out of that. That was certainly a theme from our conversation that he was pretty critical of the way that Joel does take care of his body, or I guess the lack thereof was really his outlook there. The next answer that I will play will give a little deeper, actually second to next answer, but I do want to get into the next answer that he did give. And this has been sort of a hot button topic of late about the contract extension that Joel Embiid did receive. Now, I've been pretty defensive of this contract from the stance of I kind of view it as the cost of doing business with Joel Embiid, and when you are the caliber of star that he is, that these are basically automatically handed on your desk. Now, granted, we know the reality of what the situation is. It has played out as poor as possible, and Dr. Rami sort of takes that response as well. So, with this question regarding the outlook of the contract extension, here's what Dr. Rami had to say about that. And I want you to half take off the medical hat, half put on the business hat a little bit here. So, when you think about flashback to this past offseason, one of the decisions that has been given a lot of heat to Daryl Morey directly here is giving Joel Embiid an extension, a 3-year, $192 million extension that was agreed upon this past offseason. Now, he's played 19 games this season, and in those 19 games has failed to look any semblance of the MVP version of himself. He was under contract for this season. He was under contract for next season and had a player option. Now, the Sixers have been quite public about that they had a team of doctors look at him and didn't even believe that this could have been a worst case scenario for what he was dealing with. If you were in Daryl Morey's shoes at this time, do you think this would be the type of extension that would have been a bit too risky for your blood, or do you think this is something that it was the proper decision at the time, and obviously the worst case scenario has come to light?
No, it was risky then. It's risky now. It should have never been provided to him. I mean, obviously, his past certainly suggested that he's worth that, but it was very clear that this was a poor decision. I believe it was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago in which I was even telling colleagues of mine that this player won't be able to hold up at in this kind of space, right? He
Wow.
doesn't have the profile of a player that can withstand for 15 years or withstand for 10 years, right? Obviously, he's incredibly talented and incredibly gifted, but his body was not one that would be suggested that somebody can hold on for this long period of time. So yes, when Daryl Morey provided him that extension, it seemed a little bit crazy, at least from kind of a more medical perspective.
Now, this answer was frustrating to me, and it was for a couple different reasons. Number one, if Dr. Rami is able to, from afar, profile that Joel Embiid is not a guy that is going to age well, and I think a lot of us can use our common sense with that, it is blasphemy to me that the Sixers are going to continue on this statement that we've had this team of the best doctors in the world look at him and believe that there is no world in which this contract extension goes bad. With that all being said, we do know the reality of the situation, and the Sixers have already made their bed that they have to sleep in here. So while we can kind of rewrite history and be frustrated about that, I think the better question with what it has to do with the future of Joel Embiid is how do you treat things from here and what are his options from here? So I asked Dr. Rami that question. This will be a little bit more of a long-winded response here, but here is his full thoughts on the status of Joel Embiid and the options on the table from here. It does feel like that is the specific situation that Joel is dealing with this year. And one of the things that I think is noteworthy here is like he did seemingly, and it makes it very difficult to gauge this entire situation. Part of the biggest frustration has been the lack of transparency from both Joel Embiid and the Sixers for what specifically is going on, even as recently as last year with the meniscus surgery that he very clearly got and needed at the time. Nothing broader than the word procedure that he had undergone on his knee was kind of released to the public here. But for the season as a whole, there hasn't been any official injury diagnosis really all season. It's been knee injury management, it's been knee swelling, knee soreness. Does that tell to you that that's specifically what's going on, that it is just kind of, I don't want to say just pain tolerance, but sort of it's the issue of working through things currently, correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
that's the issue. And the thing is that
Sure.
it's even hard to kind of discuss his injury because we don't really know what his injury is, right? They've been a little bit coy about what's actually going on, and I personally don't have any sort of firsthand knowledge with regards to his injury, so I can't. It's a little bit difficult to discuss it, frankly, because we don't necessarily know exactly what injuries and what's actually underlying there. There may be a whole litany of other problems that are going on that we're not even familiar with, or at least that we're not privy to. So
Right.
it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah, yeah, it has made it impossible to connect from start to finish. And we did get the official news that Joel Embiid will be shut down for the remainder of the season as they sort of pursue some sort of long-term, I guess, solutions in this. Now, we've heard a million different reports from what theoretically could happen, whether it's Joel Embiid going to Germany to get some stem cell procedure, whether it is a procedure, whatever the case may be. What sort of are the options when you get to this stage of the meniscus that you can recover? I know there was a lot theorized with this Lonzo Ball meniscus replacement surgery. That feels pretty experimental as well. So I guess based on the information we have, what sort of options could potentially be out there for Joel Embiid?
Not many. So obviously there's surgery, there's replacements of the meniscus, and there's regenerative medicine, and which I discussed earlier a little bit, which is kind of more the stem cell route and PRP injections and things of that nature, and then also the conservative route. I mean, those are really it. I mean, it's not that we have all of these various options. I think what's going on though here is that, I don't think necessarily that Joel Embiid and the team around him necessarily have the best um, ability to motivate him.
Okay.
I don't. I want to be a little bit politically correct when I say things. I obviously don't know him personally. So, but what is clear is that there are clearly some weight issues that are present, and I think there's some probably strength issues. And from what I understand and from what I read, there's some issues in motivating him. So I think it's important to kind of take a step back and kind of understand kind of the big picture of an injury. So as people age, there's degeneration. So there's breakdown of our cartilage, there's breakdown of um, different things within our body. And it would be foolish to say that there are players in the NBA right now that don't have degeneration in their knees. I'm sure that LeBron has degeneration in his knees. I mean, he's older, he's had more wear and tear, right? Kevin Durant, whoever it may be, all of these older players naturally have this degeneration in their knees. Obviously, the difference with Joel Embiid is that he's obviously a little bit heavier and what have you, but the concept of degeneration in the knees and the breakdown of the cartilage is normal. There's age-related factors with that. So the point is what we have to do is that we have to somewhat optimize our bodies in order to withstand the pounding, right? And that goes for both weekend warriors as well as players in the NBA, is that they have to optimize their strength, they have to optimize their flexibility, they have to optimize their mobility in order to reduce the effect of the poundings of playing in the NBA, right? And what is clear is that Joel Embiid is not doing that. That to me is somewhat apparently obvious because we see his body as is. He could certainly stand to get in better shape. Same with Zion, same with a lot of these players. These players can stand to get into better shape, to optimize the strength, to optimize the mobility, to reduce and mitigate the effects of playing in the NBA, right? I think that's kind of probably the route in which they should be taking.
Okay.
Um, and I'm certain that his athletic trainers and the team around him has certainly encouraged him to do so, but it's clearly not something that's sticking.
So a little bit of a, I would guess, harsh reality that Dr. Rami has given to Joel Embiid. There's some pretty strong pointed words on really his lack of attention that has been kept to his body, and it would be really interesting to see what those conversations have been like behind the scenes with the Sixers organization and with Joel Embiid specifically here. I think a little bit more of this than Dr. Rami led on to believe or kind of stated here does have to do with just his, general makeup. That I don't think Joel is he's a unique athlete for a reason. They don't grow a lot of 7'2" guys with the body type of his, and there are extra precautions that he does need to take in that direction. But some pretty interesting perspective on his overall outlook from here, and will be really interesting to see what the direction the Sixers do end up going. At this point in time, we have no clue what the recovery timeline looks like, what the recovery process looks like, and it honestly wouldn't shock me if we never find those things out because of a lot of these same reasons that I've talked about with how private Joel likes to keep his medical information. Who knows what the actual conversations are behind the scenes? It is clear that there has been this lack of alignment between him and this organization that really has derailed the season. So we'll be really interesting to see what the direction is from here. But nonetheless, appreciate you guys for tuning in for a little bit different style of video from here. Do want to hear from you guys in the comments your thoughts on that. I think I have something similar cooked up for the offseason with a lot of offseason talk with the contract stuff. Did a really great interview with Yossi Goslin speaking about the cap implications for a lot of these players. We're going to wait until the offseason to really dig into that as there's still plenty of work to go down on the court and hopefully a lot more games to lose for this Sixers team. So one more time, do want to remind you guys to make sure that you are smashing that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 28.6% of you guys watching these videos have subscribed thus far. So make sure you're hitting the button if you haven't just yet. Click a like on this video and drop your thoughts below. And you can check out that full video over on Pick Swap Media as well. So appreciate you guys for tuning in one more time. I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.